So, one of the first financial concepts which new investors need to understand is the idea of an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund is essentially just either a pool of cash or assets invested in very, very low risk liquid securities, like a money market fund, which is when you're lending money to governments for a very, very short period of time, normally months to, the average is around 3 months. And the reason for this fund is so that if anything happens to you in your day-to-day life, you've got a quick, ready, accessible amount of cash which you can withdraw at no penalty, no time cost. It's just there. An emergency happens, you have unexpected bills, you can use these funds just to pay for those things. Now, how much should you have on an emergency fund? Well, typically, the suggestion tends to be 3 months worth of expenses if you share expenses with a partner who is also generating income, or 6 months worth of expenses if you are a single income household. And the main reason for this really is that the largest and most common use of an emergency fund tends to be when you lose your income. So if you lose your job, you're made redundant, or you just burn out, decide it's not for you, or whatever the reason for that, well, at that point, you no longer have the same income that you have had up until this point in your life, but you are still spending the same amount of money every single month in expenses. So that's the point at which you have an emergency fund, which should carry you through a 6-month period. So if you're a single income household, that 6-month emergency fund will just pay for 6 months. And the theory is if you are a dual income household and one of you loses your jobs, well, you have 3 months worth of expenses, which is subsidized by the other partner's income, which would stretch to 6 months. And typically you can expect to find a new source of income within a 6-month period. However, it's not just limited to losing your job. It can be anything. I mean, the scenario I always throw out, because it happened to me, is that during COVID, my neighbour upstairs in Groningen, a water pipe burst, and that led to loads of water pouring through my ceiling in bitterly cold, I think it's either January or February, snow outside, and we had to slowly move our bed from our bedroom into the sitting room, into the kitchen, just to avoid all of the water which was coming through the ceiling. And at that point, I said, okay, let's leave. And I used my emergency fund to pay for temporary accommodation while the pipe was fixed. And that took months. Essentially, the emergency fund exists so that in the event of needing capital at short notice, you're not forced to sell any long-term investments that you've made, which is why it's all held as either cash or very short-term investments, which are unlikely to have large swings in volatility. Because if you have all of your money invested in, for example, equity, so you're investing in companies and the price is going up and down and up and down, well, what happens if you need your emergency fund when the price is down? Let's suppose some anonymous world leader has implemented tariffs on all of their allies out of the blue. Well, that's not going to stop you needing that money that day, and it's going to force you to sell at a loss. So always keep an emergency fund. They're very important, and it's just an easy way of reducing your risk, or the risk that some unforeseen event can negatively affect your investments in the long term. I've been Luke Staden. Thanks for watching.